y'all, we back. Liliana, seamstress, age and surname unknown. I speak in the present tense because for us time does not exist, only space. She's the second person to say that. I am starting to feel like that's real, because I feel that way too. And because it seems like only yesterday. The one tribal custom I did not follow was that of having my man by my side when Athena was born. The midwives came to me even though they knew I had slept with a Gaja, a foreigner. They loosened my hair, cut the umbilical cord, tied various knots, and handed it to me. At that point, tradition demands that the child be wrapped in some item of the father's clothing. He had left a scarf, which reminded me of his smell, in which I sometimes pressed my nose so as to feel him close to me. But now that perfume would vanish forever. I wrapped the baby in the scarf and placed her on the floor so that she would receive the energy from the earth. I stayed there with her, not knowing what to feel or think. My decision had been made. The midwives told me to choose a name and not tell anyone what it was. It could only be pronounced once the child was baptized. They gave me the consecrated oil and the amulets. I must hang around her neck for the 2 weeks following her birth. One of them told me not to worry, the whole tribe was responsible for my child. And although I would be the butt of much criticism, this would soon pass. They also advised me not to go out between dusk and dawn because the Sinvari, editor's note, evil spirits, might attack us and take possession of us, and from then on our lives would be a tragedy. A week later, as soon as the sun rose, I went to an adoption center in Sibiu, and I placed her on the doorstep, hoping that some charitable person would take her in. As I was doing so, a nurse caught me and dragged me inside. She insulted me in any way she could, and she said that they were used to such behavior, but that there was always someone watching, and I couldn't escape so easily from the responsibility of bringing a child into the world. Although, of course, what else would one expect from a gypsy, abandoning your own child like that? I was forced to fill in a form with all my details, and since I didn't know how to write, she said again, more than once, "Yes, well, what can you expect from a gypsy? And don't try to trick us by giving false information. If you do, it could land you in jail." Out of pure fear, I told them the truth. I looked at my child one last time, and all I could think was, "A child without a name. May you find love, much love in your life." Afterwards, I walked in the forest for hours. I remembered many nights during my pregnancy when I had both loved and hated the child herself and the man who had put her inside me. Like all women, I dreamed of one day meeting an enchanted prince who would marry me, give me lots of children, and shower attentions on the family. Like many women, I fell in love with a man who could give me none of these things, but with whom I shared some unforgettable moments my child would never understand, for she would always be stigmatized by her tribe as a Gaja and a fatherless child. I could bear that, but I didn't want her to suffer as I had suffered ever since I first realized I was pregnant. I wept and tore at my own skin, thinking that the pain of the scratches would perhaps stop me thinking about a return to ordinary life. To face the shame I had brought on the tribe, someone would take care of the child, and I would always cherish the hope of seeing her again when she had grown up. Unable to stop crying, I sat down on the ground and put my arms around the trunk of a tree. However, as soon as my tears and the blood from my wounds touched the tree, a strange calm took hold of me, and I seemed to hear a voice telling me not to worry, saying that my blood and my tears had purified the path of the child and lessened my suffering. That was a tree soul. I tell you what. Okay, tree stalk. Ever since then, whenever I despair, I remember that voice and I feel calm again. That's why I wasn't surprised when I saw her arrive with our tribe's Rumbaro, who asked me for a coffee and a drink, then smiled slyly and left. The voice told me that she would come back, and now here she is, in front of me. She's pretty. She looks like her father. I don't know what feelings she has for me. Perhaps she hates me because I abandoned her. I don't need to explain why I did what I did. No one would understand. We sit for an age without saying anything to each other. Just looking, not smiling, not crying, nothing. A surge of love rises up in the deeps of my soul, or the depths of my soul. But I don't know if she's interested in what I feel. Are you hungry? Would you like something to eat? Instinct. Instinct above all else. She nods. We go into the small room in which I live, and which is the living room, bedroom, kitchen, and sewing workshop. She looks around, shocked, but I pretend not to notice. I go over to the stove and return with 2 bowls of thick meat and vegetable broth. I've prepared strong coffee too, and just as I'm about to add sugar, she speaks for the first time. No sugar for me, thank you. I didn't know you speak English. I almost say that I learned it from her father, but I bite my tongue. We eat in silence, and as time passes, everything starts to feel familiar to me. Here I am with my daughter. She went off into the world, and now she's back. She followed paths different from mine and has come home. I know this is an illusion, but life has given me so many moments of harsh reality that it does no harm to dream a little. Who's that saint? She asked, pointing to a painting on the wall. Saint Sarah, the patron saint of gypsies. I've always wanted to visit her church in France, but I can't leave the country. I'd never get a passport or permission. I'm about to say, and even if I did, I wouldn't have enough money, but I stopped myself in time. She might think I was asking her for something. And besides, I have too much work to do. Silence falls again. She finishes her soup, lights a cigarette, and her eyes give nothing away, no emotion. Did you think you would ever see me again? I say that I did, and that I'd heard yesterday from the Rambaro's wife that she'd visited his restaurant. A storm is coming. Wouldn't you like to sleep a little? I can't hear anything. The wind isn't blowing any harder or softer than before. I'd rather talk. Believe me, I have all the time in the world. I have the rest of my life to spend by your side. Don't say that. But you're tired. I go on. I'm pretending not to have heard her remark. I can see the storm approaching. Like all storms, it brings destruction, but at the same time, it soaks the fields. And the wisdom of heaven falls with the rain. Like all storms, it will pass. The more violent it is, the more quickly it will pass. I have, thank God, learned to weather the storms. And as if all the holy Marys of the sea were listening to me, the first drops of rain began to fall on the tin roof. The young woman finishes her cigarette. I take her hand and lead her to my bed. She lies down and closes her eyes. I don't know how long she slept. I watched her without thinking anything, and the voice I'd heard in the forest was telling me that all was well and that I needn't worry, that the ways in which fate changes people are always favorable, if we only know how to decipher them. I don't know who saved her from the orphanage and brought her up and made her into the independent woman she appears to be. I offered up a prayer to that family who allowed my daughter to survive and achieve a better life. In the middle of the prayer, I felt jealousy, despair, regret, and I stopped talking to Saint Sarah. Had it really been so important to bring her back? There lay everything I'd lost and could never recover. But there, too, was a physical manifestation of my love. I knew nothing, and yet everything was revealed to me. I remembered the times I'd considered suicide and later abortion, and when when I'd imagined leaving that part of the world and setting off on foot to wherever my strength would take me. I remember my blood and tears on the tree trunk, the dialogue with nature that had intensified from that moment on has never left me. Although a few people in my tribe have any inkling of this, my protector, whom I met while I was wandering in the forest, understood, but he had just died. The light is unstable. The wind blows it out. The lightning ignites it. It is never simply there, shining like the sun, but it is worth fighting for, she used to say. He was the only person who accepted me and persuaded the tribe that I could once again form part of their world. He was the only one with the moral authority to ensure that I wasn't expelled. And alas, the only one who would never meet my daughter. I wept for him. While she lay sleeping on my bed, she who must be used to all the world's comforts, Thousands of questions filled my head. Who were her adoptive parents? Where did she live? Had she been to university? Was there someone she loved? What were her plans? But I wasn't the one who had traveled the world in search of her. On the contrary, I wasn't there to ask questions, but to answer them. She opened her eyes, and I wanted to touch her hair to give her the affection I'd kept locked inside all these years, but I wasn't sure how she would react, and thought it best to do nothing. You came here to find out why. No, I don't want to know why a mother would abandon her daughter. There's no reason for anyone to do that. Her words wound my heart, but I don't know how to respond. Who am I? What blood runs in my veins? Yesterday, when I found out where you were, I was absolutely terrified. Where do I start? I suppose, like all gypsies, you can read the future in the cards. No, that's not true. We only do that with Gaja as a way of earning a living. We never read cards or hands or try to predict a future within our own tribe. And you, I'm part of the tribe, even though the woman who brought me into the world would send me far away. Yes. So what am I doing here? Now that I've seen your face, I can go back to London. My holidays are nearly over. Do you want to know about your father? No, I haven't the slightest interest in him. And suddenly I realized that I could help her. It was as if someone else's voice came out of my mouth. Try to understand that the blood that flows through my veins and in your heart. Yeah. That was my teacher speaking through me. She closed her eyes again and slept for nearly 12 hours. The following day I took her to the outskirts of Sibiu, where there's a kind of museum of different kinds of houses found in the region. For the first time I'd had the pleasure of preparing her breakfast. She was more rested, less tense, and she asked me questions about the gypsy culture, but never about me. She told me little of her life. I learned that I was a grandmother. She didn't mention her husband or adoptive parents. She said she'd sold land in a country far from there and that she would soon return to her work. I explained that I could show her how to make amulets to ward off evil, but she didn't seem interested. However, when I spoke to her about the healing properties of herbs, she asked me to teach her how to recognize them. In the park where we were walking, I tried to pass on to her all the knowledge. Yeah?
I have a question.
What's your question?
About the amulet. Does it work like say if I accidentally while I'm up in an alleyway and then some people come up with knives, do I just use the amulet and then they go away or something?
Well, what happens is like with the evil eye protection amulets, it's like this eyeball, right? And I have a keychain somewhere. This is a lesson for all of us. My kid asked a question, we gotta all get the answer. So these amulets, I mean, they come in many forms, like Native Americans use dream catchers and stuff, but essentially what it does is it sends a warning to the negative forces, and it basically says, like, I'm protected, you can't mess with me, right? And if you have, like, an evil eye protection, like a necklace or bracelet or whatever, keychain, if somebody tries to send bad spirits to you, bad energy, bad, whatever, they try to curse you, whatever, then the eye will break. And when the eye breaks, that means that the eye does its work. So it's going to return all that energy right back to the person who tried to give it to you.
Wait. So, the eye won't just randomly just break?
Yeah. Sometimes, like, I had a keychain where the eye just broke out of the keychain. And it was like I knew in that moment, like, hey, my ancestors are now working on my behalf to send that energy back to somebody who wished bad on me.
So someone just came up from the shadows that wanted to mug me.
Yeah, I don't think anybody is going to come out of the shadows to want to mug you, Holly. That's really the rarest thing that ever happens.
I know, it's just would the amulet protect?
Well, it's not. It's more a spiritual protection, right? And usually you'll never be put in a situation like that if you're spiritually protected. Like, you will have the intuition to go away from situations that are bad. Like, you'll feel it in your soul, like, hey, this isn't right, I shouldn't be here, and you'll leave before danger ever enters, right?
Oh, so it doesn't actually help you against physical
Well, you won't
attacks?
you won't face that. Is what I'm saying. It protects you by helping you avoid it altogether.
But what if I...
Like, and everyone has to die. That's
No.
you don't have to die a bad death, but everyone has to die. But Oliver, I'm reading.
I'm just trying to think.
I'm reading. Can I read?
If
We
it's
can talk about this when I'm done doing a video.
Okay.
Thank you. In the park, where we were walking, I tried to pass on to her all the knowledge I possessed, although I was sure she'd forget everything as soon as she returned to her home country, which by then I knew was England. We don't possess the earth possesses us. We used to travel constantly, and everything around us was ours, the plants, the water, the landscapes through which our caravans passed. Our laws were nature's laws. The strong survived, and we, the weak, the eternal exiles, learned to hide our strength and to use it only when necessary. We don't believe that God made the universe. We believe that God is the universe and that we are all contained in Him, and He in us. Although I stopped, then decided to go on because it was a way of paying homage to my protector. In my opinion, we should call him Goddess or Mother. Not like the woman who gives her daughter up to an orphanage, but like the woman in all of us who protects us when we are in danger. She will always be with us while we perform our daily tasks with love and joy, understanding that nothing is suffering and everything is a way of praising creation. Athena, now I knew her name, looked across at one of the houses in that park. What's that, a church? The hours I'd spent by her side had allowed me to recover my strength. I asked if she was trying to change the subject. She thought for a moment before replying, "No, I want to go on listening to what you have to tell me. Although, according to everything I read before I came here, what you're saying isn't part of the gypsy tradition. My protector taught me these things. He knew the things the gypsies don't know, and he made the tribe take me back. And as I learned from him, I gradually became aware of the power of the mother. I, who had rejected the blessings of being a mother." I pointed at a small bush. "If one day your son has a fever, place him next to a young plant like this, and shake its leaves. The fever will pass over into the plant. If you ever feel anxious, do the same thing. I'd rather you told me more about your protector. He taught me that in the beginning, creation was so lonely that it created someone else to talk to. Those two creatures, in an act of love, made a third person, and from then on they multiplied by thousands and millions. You asked about the church we just saw. I don't know when it was built, and I'm not interested. My temple is the park, the sky, the water, and the lake, and the stream that feeds it. My people are those who share my ideas, and not those I'm bound to by bonds of blood. My ritual is being with those people and celebrating everything around me. When are you thinking of going home?" "Possibly tomorrow. I don't want to inconvenience you." Another wound to my heart, but I could say nothing. "No, please stay as long as you like." "I only asked because I like to celebrate your arrival with the others. If you agree, I can do this tonight." She says nothing, and I understand this as a yes. Back home, I give her more food, and she explains that she needs to go to her hotel in Sibiu to fetch some clothes. By the time she arrives, I have everything organized. We go to a hill to the south of the town. We sit down around a fire that has just been lit. We play instruments, we sing, we dance, we tell stories. She watches but doesn't take part. Although the Rambaro told me that she was a fine dancer, for the first time in many years I feel happy because I've had the chance to prepare a ritual for my daughter and to celebrate with her the miracle of the two of us being together, alive and healthy, and immersed in the love of the Great Mother. Afterward, she says that she'll sleep at the hotel that night. I asked her if this is goodbye, and she says that it isn't. She'll come back tomorrow. For a whole week, my daughter and I shared together the adoration of the universe. One night, she brought a friend, making it quite clear that he was neither her boyfriend nor the father of her child, the man who must have been 10 years older than her, asked who we were worshiping and our rituals, and I explained that worshiping someone means, according to my protector, placing that person outside of our world. We are not worshiping anyone or anything. We are simply communing with the creation. But do you pray? Myself, I pray to Saint Sarah, but here we are part of everything, and we celebrate rather than pray. I felt that Athena was proud of my answer, but I was really only repeating my protector's words. And why do this in a group when we can all celebrate the universe on our own? Because the others are me, and I am the others. Athena looked at me then, and I felt it was my turn to wound her heart. I'm leaving tomorrow, she said. Before you do, come and say goodbye to your mother. That was the first time in those days I had used the word. My voice didn't tremble, my gaze was steady, and I knew that despite everything, standing before me was the blood of my blood, the fruit of my womb. At that moment, I was behaving like a little girl who has just found out that the world isn't full of ghosts and curses as grown-ups have taught us. It's full of love, regardless of how that love is manifested. A love that forgives our mistakes and redeems our sins. She gave me a long embrace. Then she adjusted the veil I wore to cover my hair. I may not have had a husband, but according to Gypsy tradition, I had to wear a veil because I was no longer a virgin. What would tomorrow bring me? Along with the departure of being, I've always both loved and feared from a distance. I was everyone, and everyone was me in my solitude. The following day, Athena arrived, bearing a bunch of flowers. She tidied my room and told me that I should wear glasses because my eyes are getting worn out from all that sewing. She asked if the friends I celebrated with experienced any problems with the tribe, and I told her that they didn't, that my protector had been a very respected man. I had taught us many things and had followers all over the world. I explained that he died shortly before she had arrived. One day, a cat brushed into him. To us, that means death, and we were all very worried. But although there is a ritual that can lift such a curse, my protector said it was time for him to leave, and that he needed to travel to those other worlds that he knew existed, to be reborn as a child, to rest for a while in the arms of the mother. His funeral took place in a forest nearby. It was a very simple affair, but people came from all over the world. Among those people was there a woman of about 35 with dark hair. I can't be sure, but possibly. Why do you ask? I met someone at a hotel in Bucharest, and she said she'd come to attend the funeral of a friend. I think she'd said something about her teacher. She asked me to tell her more about the gypsies, but there wasn't much she didn't already know, mainly because, apart from customs and traditions, we know little of our own history. I suggested that she go to France one day and take, on my behalf, a shawl to present to the image of Saint Sarah in the little French village of Sainte-Marie-de-la-Mer. 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 Okay, sorry, I'm learning. Going from English to French is not the easiest, okay? I came here because there was something missing in my life, she said. I needed to fill up my blank spaces, and I thought just seeing your face would be enough, but it wasn't. I also need to understand that I was loved. You are loved. I said nothing else for a long time. I'd finally put into words what I'd wanted to say ever since I let her go, so that she would not become too emotional. I went on, I'd like to ask you something. Ask me anything you like. I want to ask your forgiveness. She bit her lip. I've always been a very restless person. I work hard, spend too much time looking after my son. I dance like a mad thing. I learned calligraphy. I go to courses on selling. I read one book after another. that's all a way of avoiding these moments when nothing is happening, because those blank spaces give me a feeling of absolute emptiness in which not a single crumb of love exists. My parents have always done everything they could for me, and I do nothing but disappoint them. But here, during the time we've spent together celebrating nature and the Great Mother, I've realized that those empty spaces were starting to get filled up. They were transformed into pauses, the moment when the man lifts his hand from the drum before bringing it down again to strike it hard. I think I can leave now. I'm not saying that I'll go in peace, because my life needs to follow the rhythm I'm accustomed to, but I won't leave feeling bitter. Do all gypsies believe in the Great Mother? If you were to ask them, none of them would say yes. They've adopted the beliefs and customs of the places where they've settled, and the only thing that unites us in religious terms is a worship of Saint Sarah, and making a pilgrimage, at least once in our life, to visit the womb in Sainte-Marie de la Mer. Some tribes call her Kali Sarah, Black Sarah. I don't know if y'all know about Hindu tradition, but Kali is a hell of a goddess. Or the Virgin of the Gypsies. She's known in Lourdes. Okay, it came back to me. Okay, she's known in Lourdes. I have to go, Athena said after a while. The friend you met the other day is leaving with me. He seems like a nice man. You're talking like a mother. I am your mother. And I am your daughter. She embraced me this time with tears in her eyes. I stroked her hair as I held her in my arms, and as I'd always dreamed I would, ever since the day when fate or my fear separated us. I asked her to take good care of herself, and she told me that she had learned a lot. You'll learn a lot more too, because although nowadays we're all trapped in houses, cities, and jobs, there still flows in your blood the time of caravans and journeyings, and the teachings that the Great Mother placed in our path so that we could survive. Learn, but always learn with other people by your side. Don't be alone in the search, because if you take a wrong step, you'll have no one there to help you and to help put you right. She was still crying, still clinging to me, almost begging me to let her stay. I pleaded with my protector not to let me shed one tear, because I wanted the best for Athena, and her destiny was to go forward here in Transylvania. Apart from my love, she would find nothing else. And although I believe that love is enough to justify the whole experience, I was quite sure that I couldn't ask her to sacrifice her future in order to stay by my side. Athena planted a kiss on my forehead and left without saying goodbye, perhaps thinking she would return one day. Every Christmas she sent me enough money to spend the whole year without having to sew. But I never went to the bank to cash her checks, even though everyone in the tribe thought I was behaving like a foolish woman. 6 months ago, she stopped sending money. She must have realized that I needed my sewing to fill up what she called blank spaces. I would love to see her again, but I know she'll never come back. She's probably a big executive now, married to the man she loves, and I probably have lots of grandchildren, which means that my blood will remain on this earth, and my mistakes will be forgiven. Damn, son. I love this book. Alright, I'm going to keep reading a little bit more. I was going to be like, alright, today I should probably get ready to go, but maybe a little bit more. Okay, sorry to all my friends that I'm probably late to be seen, okay? Samira R. Coelho, housewife. As soon as Shireen arrived home, whooping with joy, clutching at a rather startled Bioral to her, I knew that everything had gone much better than I'd imagined.
Mom, you're done?
You know what? I'll come back and read. I knew that this was, you know, I knew it was coming. I felt it. I knew it. Alright, my own little Bioral. It's funny, we were talking about this book, me and Oliver, and I was like, it's hilarious because the same letters that make up the name Bioral are the same letters that make up the name Oliver, and my life is hanging out with this kid. So, yeah, I thought that was hilarious. Anyway, Ollie, I will be done. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Namaste. I love you guys. Talk to you later.